This monarch can fly. Two people in Port Colborne were different. One was Curtis Williams, who got picked on for being a funny boy. Curtis was a year younger than me. Like every kid in town, he spent summers swimming in the canal near the steps at 3rd Ferry. Johnny Ridgway once held Curtis's head underwater, as if that might stop him from liking boys. When Curtis played dead, Johnny eased up quick. Then Curtis kicked to get away and swam across to 2nd Ferry. He climbed out and never went swimming again. The other was Mary Mitchell. A few years older than me, she was born in the States, as a boy named Morris. Before finishing high school, she had all the work done, whatever that meant, and she looked good. Real good. She didn't get picked on as much, but we stared, mouths wide with wonder. We also snickered and stayed clear, as though she were contagious. Hard to believe a town as small as Port Colborne had room for characters like those two. Yet he lived on Stanley Street, and she was a block away on Ash. Some believed Curtis and Mary should get together and cancel each other out. We were that stupid back then. Though I knew about Mary from the day she moved to town, I only talked to her once. I was in the fraternity, Delta Zeta, and I had the 49 Monarch, so it must have been 57 or 58 when I was already out of school. My Uncle Lyle, who lived with us, bought the Monarch at an auction for $90. Lyle sold it to my dad and I bought it from him, paid him $5 a week for what seemed like an eternity. Steel blue with white wall tires, the car was a beauty when I first saw it, and a wreck before I was done. We weren't kind to that car. It was the town taxi. Anyone needing a lift called me. Like most cars before air conditioning, there were hinged, triangular vent windows on each side, but neither lasted long. The first got smashed when the keys were locked inside. The second went for the same reason. When we forgot, the other was already missing. The front and rear doors opened away from each other, rather than in the same direction. But 3 of 4 doors were jammed shut because the handles were missing, jarred loose by friends trying to get in or out after too many beers. The interior handle on the driver's side was the only surviving one. Monarchs were heavy cars, streamlined and solid, but I could make her fly. On Golf Course Road, there was a raised railway crossing. At the right speed, I'd get airborne, land with a bounce, and take off again. It was the most thrilling thing I could do at 18 or 19. When the Monarch was down to her last days, I went to Hudson's used cars. Tommy Hudson was running it then. I went to school with his kid brother, Kevin. I asked Tommy what he'd give for the Monarch as a trade-in. All he said was, "Give you $1 to get it off my lot." The fraternity owned a cottage at Morgan's Point. 6 or 7 boys lived there all summer, though it only had one big living area and a single bedroom. There was a dance hall on the point, always crowded with Americans. Mary was there one Saturday night. Not knowing anything about her, American men went after Mary, same as any local girl they planned on abandoning by Labor Day. Mary must have left before the dance ended. When the music stopped, 50 or 60 people flocked to the cottage. Some kept partying, others got sick on the front lawn. I woke the next morning in my car with rain pelting down and someone knocking on the windshield. 2 fellas wanted a lift home. I told them to climb in. I pulled out, turned onto Lakeshore Road, and there was Mary, soaking wet, thumbing a ride. I spotted her bright pink lipstick 100 yards off. One of the guys rolled down a window and shouted, "Did you spend last night with a boy or a girl?" She changed her hitching thumb to a middle finger. I came back hours later after a long nap at my parents' place. In the heavy rain, it looked like a sodden tree stump stood on the gravel along the far side of the road. I drove past and spotted glowing pink lips in the rearview mirror. Mary hadn't moved. It was a gut punch to see her stranded after all that time. She had no umbrella. Her long hair and gray dress looked like tree bark, they were so soaked. Lakeshore Road was seldom busy, but there must have been a car every couple minutes at least. They all ignored her. 2 miles north, Highway 3 had more traffic and better odds of getting a ride. Or she could have walked to Port Colborne in half the time I was gone. But she was barefoot. She later told me she threw both shoes away after breaking a heel. At the cottage, I parked on the grass. 3 fraternity boys sat on the sheltered front steps, sharing a beer. "Where'd you get to, Ron? We've been waiting." All 3 got in, and I backed onto the road. A minute later, we turned on Lakeshore and spotted Mary. One of these guys also shouted at her. Asked her when Curtis was picking her up. I hated myself for leaving her there and rushed back after dropping everyone off. Mary still hadn't moved. I did a 3-point turn on the roadway, then pulled onto the shoulder. She stood on the passenger side. I can imagine what she thought of my junkyard car. Twice it passed her, with people shouting abuse. I leaned over, rolled down the window, and offered her a drive home. There is a lot more story to get to, but in order to read it, you're going to have to pick up the issue. Thank you.